Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and I'm Reverend Lawrence Adell Sifa, and we are not doing a religious interview here. We're interviewing Alexandria Joy Taylor. She is running for the state of Michigan Supreme Court, which is a very important position. She'll be one of 7 judges that will be making decisions on 9 million people. Just wanted to say something here. According to the Johnson Amendment, that was actually came into effect in 1954, 1 year after I was born. I was 1 year old then. It's a provision in the U.S. tax code since 1954 that prohibits all 501(c) and nonprofit organizations, which we are here at All Points TV and Army Rivers Church, from enduring or opposing political candidates. Okay. It says here that in the early 21st century, some politicians, including former President Donald Trump, have sought to repeal this provision, arguing that it restricts the free speech and rights of the church and other religious groups. These efforts have been criticized because churches have fewer reporting requirements than other nonprofit organizations. And they do not want us to be for or against a political candidate. This interview today will be with All Points TV. It is not a religious interview. And we want you to know, you, the voting public in the state of Michigan, and others that may be out the world that have the right to vote in the state of Michigan, according to residency, will have an understanding of exactly what attorney Alexandra Joy Taylor is all about. So stay tuned and we'll find out. Okay, all right. Well, usually we have the teaser and then we come in with the understanding. So that was our producer just making all kinds of hand sounds in the background there behind the glass. We are right now talking about attorney Alexandra Joy Taylor running for the Michigan State Supreme Court Justice. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born?
So I was born in Detroit.
Yes.
Grew up in Romulus, graduated from Romulus High School. I went to undergraduate at Michigan State.
Oh, great. That's my alumni.
Yes,
okay.
Go Green. And I have an MBA from Eastern. And then I went to law school at Detroit Mercy Law School, where I'm also an adjunct professor now.
Wow. So you teach there?
I do.
Teach the youth coming up.
I do. I'm very, very passionate about teaching young lawyers, because I think if we want to have a better bar, that we have to do our part in training and molding young lawyers. And so when I graduated from law school, well, prior to that, I actually worked at the Supreme Court.
So you worked at the Supreme Court?
I did, in law school.
What did you do there?
So I just was a judicial intern, and I worked under the former Chief Justice Marilyn Kelly.
Yes.
And it's quite an experience. I learned a lot. I drove her to Lansing once or twice a week and was able to see, everything that happens and kind of everything that happens behind the scenes, it gave me an in-depth look at that. And so when I graduated from law school, she actually swore me in when I passed the bar. And then I went on to work at a boutique criminal defense firm in Royal Oak that did a lot of high profile cases. So I worked there for about 4 years. Gained a lot of litigation experience. During my time there, I worked as assistant city attorney to the cities of Woodhaven and Allen Park. And then in 2015, I took the leap and opened up my own firm downtown Detroit. And I chose downtown because it was kind of full circle for me. When my mom moved to Michigan from Mississippi, she worked as an executive officer at MBD Bank downtown Detroit.
Wow.
Yes.
That goes back quite a while.
Quite a while.
And that's Taylor Law.
Taylor Law Firm. Yes, downtown Detroit. And we specialize in criminal defense, family law cases, and some complex civil litigation.
Got a question. How many other lawyers are on your team?
So I've had other lawyers throughout the years, but right now it's just myself, and then we have a full team of law clerks, interns, paralegals, and staff.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now your chief of staff, Pastor Kelly Davis.
Yes,
Yes. She's one of your pastors.
she is.
Okay. And your both pastors are who?
So it's her and her husband are my pastors.
And her husband is
Apostle Damon Davis.
Apostle Damon Davis.
Yes.
And what's the name of the church?
The name of the church is Kingdom Now Ecclesia. It's in Warren. Yes.
Okay. All right. Warren's a very important part of the Detroit metropolitan area.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
And what year were you born?
1981.
1981.
Yes.
Could we have your birthday? I know you're not supposed to ask women that.
January 14th.
January 14th.
Yeah.
So you're almost a New Year's baby.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And how long have you been practicing law?
13 years.
13 years.
Yes.
Okay. And you became a member of the Michigan Bar Association.
Right.
What day was that?
Oh, I think it was October 14th, 2021.
October
I'm
14th.
sorry, 2011, not 2021, 2011.
2011.
Yes.
So you know how the modern law is,
Yes.
not the old traditional
Right.
type
Common
law.
law. Yes.
Common law.
Yes.
Okay. What parts of the law do you specialize in?
So I specialize in criminal defense, family law. I do appellate law as well. I'm very passionate about wrongful conviction cases because the reality is sometimes judges get it wrong, sometimes juries get it wrong. And that redemptive process, it reminds me, just like the ministry, And so I do a lot of those, and then a little bit of complex civil litigation.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Appellate law is probably a very good education for the Supreme Court.
It is, yes.
Yes. And that gives you the understanding about wrongful convictions.
Right.
With the what do you see and believe about our state government at the present time?
So our state government, I think here in Michigan and even much in the country I see this battle of good versus evil. And so I see an overreach in government, something that the founding fathers never intended. I mean, they intended that the power would mainly be with we the people, and the vision was for small government. So we see this toppling of government. We see this expansion of the police power, like in our state. So, for example, even with more recent things that have happened here in Michigan, with the taking away of local control for solar and wind, and the governor is giving it to this 3-person panel, but she appoints these 3 people, so she's essentially acting through these 3 people. And so I am a constitutionalist and an originalist, and so I believe that we should follow the Constitution. And so the Constitution is very specific on those powers that are not specifically dedicated to the federal government are reserved for we the people. And so I just see this broad overreach of government in this day and time.
So you see that the dog is not wagging the tail, is not wagging the dog. The thing is, we interviewed Bill Bain, who is in that same issue about the vote that the local government would have the voice.
Right.
And there's signatures right now to change that.
We're helping to collect as well, because we're going around the state, and so we've been helping to drop off. Like I did a UP tour a couple weeks ago, so we dropped off some petitions up there because obviously their first efforts to get it on the ballot this year failed, and so now we're doing it with the hopes of getting it on the ballot next year. But the thing is, and I talked about this last night, I was at an event, the best way to address these issues is through elections. Elections have consequences. And so we have elected officials who, to me, quite frankly, don't respect the Constitution. And so, just like we were talking about before, there are certain wheels that turn very slow, but elections is the fastest and the most efficient way to make a change. And so if the balance of power changes in our state, then I think that you will see, some of these things and these rights and powers in the Constitution given back to the people as it should be.
The Constitution, yes. And you said you went to the Upper Peninsula.
I did.
So you have a compassion for all the state of Michigan, not just the areas that are not populated like the Upper Peninsula.
Yes, and let me say this, they were very, very happy that we came up, and the sentiment that we heard from the UP is that they feel forgotten about, because they said that statewide candidates hardly ever come up there to hear their concerns and address their issues. And so they feel slighted. And so the reception that we received in the UP was simply amazing.
Wow. So what do you plan to bring to the Michigan State Supreme Court if you're elected?
I plan to bring a perspective that respects our Constitution. And that's not what I see now. What I see now is I see political agendas being put forth through the judiciary. I see the weaponization of the judiciary against political opponents. I mean, we're not just seeing it, on a national level, like with President Trump, we're seeing it here in our state as well. And so just a balanced, fair perspective. But again, putting the Constitution and the rule of law first and setting aside politics.
Yeah. Do you know that the first female to sit on the state of Michigan Supreme Court was Mary Coleman?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what do you think about the way she sat on the court?
I think that it's a good thing to have a diversity of perspective on the court. I do value that. And I know now, I mean, you have quite a few women that are on the court at the present moment. But I'm running on the fact that, again, we need people who are rule of law and who actually respect the Constitution. And I think that's what we're lacking. You just see this people effectuating their political agendas through their seat on the judiciary, which that was never the intention of those seats.
Now, you interned
I
on
did.
the state of Michigan Supreme Court, so you have a compassion
Yes.
for the rule of law and
Yes.
the conservative nature.
Yes.
Right? And where the people rule
Yes.
and not the government.
Not the government.
So with that understanding, there's some important issues that have
Yes.
come to the states
Yes.
since the last election.
Yes.
We had the overturn of Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
And because you're running for a state office, a very important state office, what is your position on abortion?
I am pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception.
Begins at conception.
Yes.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You're also
Yes.
a Christian.
I am.
And
Yes.
that's another plus for those of you that are voting.
I'm a PK.
PK, there you go.
Yes.
But the thing is about being pro-life is we did programs a few years back, and in the Word of God, the 66 books that we hold so dear,
Yes.
that was canonized, the New and Old Testament, for one purpose and one purpose only, to show us and testify who Jesus Christ is.
Yes.
Not was, but
Is.
is. And that understanding, we found that life did not just begin at conception. It says in the Word of God that He knew us before we were in our mother's womb.
Yes.
So the mind of God.
Yes.
So if you want to find out where conception is, you'd have to
Yes.
abort the mind of God.
Yes.
Okay. But also tell us a little bit about you're very versed in appellate law.
Yes.
When did you receive Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior?
Oh. So I grew up immersed in church life. Like I said, my stepdad is a pastor, and very early on, but as an adult, it was in my freshman year at Michigan State. I was involved in the group that's Campus Crusade for Christ.
Yes.
And that's, when I made the conscious decision as an adult to live my life for Jesus. And that was a critical point in my life, but I still had kind of a religious mindset because I grew up very traditional Southern Baptist.
Okay.
Like,
Oh, wow.
women aren't allowed to preach Southern Baptist. Women are not allowed in the pulpit. And so when my parents died, I was introduced to the charismatic church. So I had never seen that, never been introduced to like healing and deliverance. And so when I started going to church with Apostle Kelly and Apostle Damon, that's really when I had a real revelation of the ecclesia, and the fact that much of my understanding of the Bible was skewed because of the teaching that I received, and how it, when you look at the original text and the original translation of certain words, it had a different meaning. And so at that point, in my life, I had a revelation of the ecclesia and then what my role is, and just I was activated, so to speak.
Well, there's a lot of different beliefs and faiths that watch our program.
Right.
And here at All Points TV.
Yes.
There's Muslims, there's Jews, there's Zoroastrians, there's Buddhists.
Yes.
And the thing is, to understand the ecclesia as it explained in the Bible,
Yes.
okay, it means the government,
Yes.
God's government.
Yes.
And do you believe God's government should be liberal or conservative? Or is it?
I mean, I don't, obviously, you don't have those terms like Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, but I believe that it lines up with conservative values. Like when you look at the Bible and the way we're supposed to live and conduct ourselves,
Mhm.
it is conservative.
That's the way we should live.
Yes.
Conservative. And I take it that you're compassionate about even women preaching.
Yes.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, majority of my life, I grew up, under the teaching that women are not supposed to preach. That women could teach other women, but women were not necessarily allowed in the pulpit unless it was like a Women's Day or a Mother's Day type program. And so when I got under the leadership of Apostle Kelly and Apostle Damon and learned, the true meaning behind those scriptures, and that's, it wasn't this blanket generalization against women preaching. It opened up my eyes, and it showed me the work of the enemy, because I thought about how many women's purposes were thwarted because of wrong teaching.
Mhm.
And so, it made me passionate about just making sure that other women, especially women that have a call of ministry on their life, know that that's incorrect doctrine, saying that women are not supposed to preach and teach. And so it really opened up my eyes. And then just studying women in the Bible and seeing that that simply was not true. And it was something, I'll say this, it was something within me all along that kind of questioned that back then. Like, having read the Bible, even though I didn't have a full revelation and the baptism of the Holy Spirit, but just something didn't sit right. And so when I came into full understanding and knowledge and revelation of that, it just was like a peace, because I realized, all those years, everything that they said was wrong.
Yeah. You said you have a stepfather.
Yes.
Okay. Your biological father
Is deceased.
Mm-hmm. How long ago?
So my parents died in 2015, both of them.
Both of them.
Mm-hmm.
In 2015?
Yes.
Could I ask how that happened? What was the reason?
So my dad had sarcoidosis, and then my mother, she died from ovarian cancer.
Okay. All right. And do you have any other siblings?
I do. So I have a sister, two sisters in Georgia, one in Texas, and then a brother. He moves about. He's a truck driver, so he's kind of all over.
Yeah. I have a sister in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Monet Merriweather.
Yeah.
And she lives in Lawrenceville.
My sister used to live in Lawrenceville.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
They have a very strict Baptist, Southern Baptist churches, and they just rock and roll. It's
Yes.
great. But what do you think the greatest challenges to the state of Michigan Supreme Court in the future, if you're elected? What do you think the challenges are for the court?
I think that the biggest challenges, so right now in Michigan, the Democrats largely control everything. I mean, we have a Democrat governor, attorney general, secretary of state. The Democrats control the House and the Senate. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of cases brought before the court dealing with the constitutionality of this legislation, over these past years. There's a lot. I mean, even now, the most recent Senate bill regarding election law, I mean, they're essentially making it easier to cheat, harder to challenge. Our red flag laws, local control. And I think that someone mentioned there's already a case in the pipeline about
Yes.
the local control. And so I do believe that all of these issues regarding this recent legislation will come before the court within the next 8 years, because these terms, the term I'm running for is 4 years, it's a partial term,
Okay.
but a regular term is 8 years. So I think within these next 4 to 8 years, we will see a majority of this legislation come before the court.
Yeah, I graduated from Michigan State University.
Yeah.
What it was James Madison College.
Yes,
There,
James
Michigan State
Madison.
Case Law.
Yes.
And when I graduated was 1978. And you know you're getting old when all your professors die and left the planet. But
Yeah.
and I attended all of their eulogies except for one, Jack
Oh, wow.
Painter. And he didn't actually. It was really amazing what he did. My first time, I'm used to 4.0 and 3.75
Yes.
and that. He gives me a D- on one paper, and he marks all over it. And he says, you don't deserve to be in college. You should go back and work in your dad's grocery store. We had
Oh,
grocery
wow.
stores. And so he put me in elementary education for English, and I couldn't take it. So I quit, and packed all my things and left school. Well, it took me about a year and a half after my family coaxing me, go back to school, this and that.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be a lawyer, but I'm probably the only minister that is on the roster there at James
Oh,
Madison
wow.
College. But anyway, so finally I go back to school, and I kept, I had to have legal political theory 103. And in order to get my degree, which is in justice, morality, and constitutional democracy, which is, as you know, it's constitutionalism.
Yeah.
My education. And I know what you're talking about on the Supreme Court. It's very important because you don't make just a decision at that time. You make a decision for many years in the future.
Yes.
So I remember going through Jack Peter's class, and everything in school, it becomes part of you. Okay, you learn things. So I kept waiting for him to go on vacation so that somebody would take his, because they had a 1, 2, and 3 legal
Yeah.
political theory. So finally, about 3 terms before I graduated, I says, okay, I got to take his class. And so I took his class. First paper, he just wrote at the bottom, your writing has improved immensely. And he gave me, I think it was 3.75 on the first paper. And I ended up, that class, I had 3.75 at the end. So then the next term, okay, and all the props were in this one on 3rd floor case hall. And he says, Mr. Sifa, what changed in your writing? And I said, you're going to have it. I says, I told you exactly what you wanted to hear. I says, the thing is, you learned a certain way. And I said, I learned absolutely nothing in your class, but I told you what you wanted to hear. And I learned through that process that sometimes some people don't take, how would you say, rejection or
Right.
knowledge properly. But question for you, where did you do your undergraduate work?
What do you mean?
Undergraduate education.
It's Michigan State.
Michigan State.
Yes.
And what was your degree in?
Psychology.
Psychology.
Yes.
The psych department.
Yes.
And the thing is, that's probably a great education foundation for law.
It is. So initially I wanted, it's so funny, I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. I did. So I was fascinated about why people commit crimes, but I just was the type of person, I love research, and I'm still that way today. That's why I love appellate law. I love research, I love writing, and I just wanted to be in a cubicle researching and writing, and so that's the course that I was on. So I did independent studies with the grad students because you need those letters of recommendation for the PhD program. So I was on that track, and then I graduated, and I started thinking, I'm just like, I don't think this is a path that God has for me. So in the interim, that's why I strongly believe in sometimes just being still a little bit until God reveals a plan. So in the interim, I said, well, I'll get an MBA to diversify from the social sciences.
Okay.
Because I just always love the social sciences. So I'm like, an MBA is a golden degree, and I can always fall back on it, So I went to Eastern, did the MBA, and then during that time, I said, okay, God has wanted me to go to law school. And the funny thing is that I had a fear of public speaking.
Had a fear of public speaking?
I did.
You want to become a lawyer?
Right. So I was just like, I don't know how this is going to work, Lord, but I'm going to do it. And so my first year of law school, I had to participate. It was a required moot court competition for all first year law students. It's called G. Menon Williams, and everybody has to participate. And so, I have my fact pattern. I'm preparing. Well, the day of oral argument, I probably just like sweat through my shirt. Like, I was so nervous. I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm just like, look, I was prepared, but I had never done anything like that, like arguing in front of anyone. And so I did it. and I ended up making it to the final rounds. And then I ended up being in the moot court program at UDM Law, and I had a reputation all throughout law school for being a talented, orator. And so I tell my students this when I teach law school. I feel that sometimes God, will bury like your greatest dreams inside of something that kind of scares you, because you have to have faith to step out. Like if it was easy, everybody would do it. And so I had to have faith that, okay, you're calling me to this, Lord. And even though in my flesh, like I'm really scared and nervous, and this is definitely outside of my comfort zone, I'm going to trust you.
So you said you have to have faith.
Yes.
Are you able to, in college, teach about mentioning Christianity?
Well, I do. I mean, UDM it's a religious school,
Okay.
but it's still, to me, a lot of these colleges nowadays have a liberal bend, especially when it comes to talking about God. But I do, and I have it on my website, and it's so funny because one of the other professors at the school, she was like, she read it to her students, because it's a testimony on my law firm website about that, about me being scared, and it's like my David Goliath story, and just stepping out on faith. But I talk about that because I think it's important for them to know, like sometimes you will be scared, and I believe firmly that God takes you outside of your comfort zone, because again, it doesn't require faith if it's easy. If I'm comfortable, that's no faith. If I'm comfortable and it's something that I feel that I can do in my own flesh, then that doesn't really require faith. And so I let them know that bridge between, an ordinary life, which might not be a bad life, and an extraordinary life, that bridge is faith. And so when you walk across that, it might be a little scary. And just like for me, it was very scary in the beginning, and I could have never imagined that I would have a career in litigation.
I apologize. Earlier, should I call you Attorney Alexandria Taylor, or Alexandra, or
Alexandria's
whatever?
fine. Or Alex, yeah.
That's and you in law school. Okay, you teach.
Yes.
What classes do you teach in law school?
So I teach two classes. One is called the Small Firm, and it's a law firm program, which is it's a program they developed at UDM, which is supposed to provide like practical, real world experience for young aspiring lawyers. And then I also teach family law firm program.
Wow, family law. My sister in Lawrenceville, Georgia, is a PhD in clinical psychology. So you know about that.
Yes,
and she does drug abuse and domestic violence. Those are very important things right now in our life that is controlled by the social medias.
Yes.
You listen to social medias, you don't know what to believe.
Right.
But those two, it seems like small, what is it for?
So a small firm. So it's essentially about owning your own law firm.
Okay.
That's what it's about. Yeah.
So you're teaching them probably what you went through. I
am, and trying to bridge the disconnect between law school and real life practice, because, when I went to law school, there was a slight disconnect between the academic side of law school and then actually preparing young aspiring lawyers to practice law. And so I try to bridge that disconnect with like practical tips. Have them come to court with me. Just things like, for example, when you walk into a court, what do you do? Who do you check in with? So those things that I was not taught in law school, you kind of learned it on your own. Or the firm that I was in, they were very good, but some stuff I just had to learn on my own. Mm-hmm. So I tried to bridge that by teaching them just like those small basics. Or, when you file a motion, you have to do a notice of hearing, and you have to, do a proof of service. And so teaching them that, and then also the business side of having a firm, because many lawyers I see fail at practice, and it's not because they're not talented lawyers, but they're bad at business. And so their law firms fail. They could be the most talented litigator you've ever seen, but if they're bad at business, the firm itself is not going to be successful
and thrive.
And
then you mentioned, so you're helping the underdog.
Yes.
The individual.
Yes.
The one that wants to strike out and make a difference in our life and the world.
Absolutely.
Here in the state of Michigan. Family law.
Yes.
I was going to go to law school, and I took the LSAT. And if I had like a 9, twice I took it. 9 more points, I could have got a free boat at Harvard or Yale.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't the plan that God had for me.
Yes.
So, but family law was my last to protect this family law. There's 99% nonsense and 1% business. You fight over Aunt Martha's silverware.
Foolishness.
And now practicing, you teach that for others to practice it. What do you see as importance in family law?
So family law takes a special kind of person to practice. Let me say that. And when I passed the bar and I was hired into the firm that I was in, I did not want to do family law because I had just went through a divorce. And
wow.
I was just like, no, Lord, why would you do this? And of course, where do they put me? In the family law division. But I, God had a purpose, and family law is almost like ministry, doing family law. I see a lot of brokenness. And nowadays I see so many divorces that don't have anything to do with infidelity or financial issues. It's just people change out partners like clothes. So that's what I see. I see a lot of just unwillingness to compromise, no grace, very few. I don't know. It's just some of these people, it's like there's no grace or mercy for the other person. It's just, I'm done, or I met somebody else. And it's a striking difference from when I first entered the practice in 2011 to now. Just people who have an unwillingness to work things out. And I just see a loss of family values, a loss of a value for the traditional family unit. And I think some of that is just this liberal agenda that is at work in our state and in our country, in particular with women. So no more, women, it's just like, we don't want to stay home. We don't want to raise the kids like we're independent. We want to, so I was raised in a home with very traditional gender roles.
Wow.
Very, very traditional. And I believe that marriage is a traditional institution.
Yes.
And so, but I see a moving away from that greatly.
Okay. So, tell me about your relationship with your father.
So
what is his name?
Richard Taylor.
Richard Taylor.
Yeah. So we had a really good relationship. Obviously it was cut short when he passed, but we had a good relationship.
How old were you when your father passed?
So that was 9 years ago. So 36, 35 or 30, no, 34.
34.
Yeah.
And when was it you moved out of your mother and father's home?
So with my mom and my stepdad. So I moved out. So after I graduated from Michigan State, I came back for a year and then I moved out, so to speak. I moved like a mile down the street. So I wasn't.
So you were close.
I've never gone very far. So I'm the baby of my family. My sister is 16 years older than me.
Oh,
so
wow.
And all of my siblings are 16 to 18 to 20 years older than me. Like my parents were older when they had me. And so I never went far. So I moved a mile down the street. And then when I met my older kid's father and we got married, we bought a house that was like 5 miles in the other direction in the same city. So we didn't go far.
Now, how many years were you married before you went through that
6 years
death called divorce?
Yes, about 6 years.
6 years. And did that produce children?
Yes, 2 children.
2 children. And what are their names?
Jackson and Jillian.
Jackson and Jillian.
Yes, Jack and Jill.
Jack and Jill. Wow.
Run up the hill. Yes. I love nursery rhymes.
I have a stepson, Daniel, and his first daughter was Bonnie. And he was gonna call the male child Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde.
I love it.
Ended up being Daniel Jr. But anyway, so with that in mind, are you close to your children, or is their father close to your children?
We both are. So they're 17 and 15 now. So but they've always primarily lived with me, but their dad is very active, but we're all close. We hang out together. We have what some people would probably consider an odd co-parenting relationship because we're all so close. And he remarried, and I'm very close with his wife. We do things together like without him, because I love my children, and I believe that if you love your children and you really want to do what's in their best interest, that you would set differences aside. But the other thing is I went through the healing and deliverance process from that, and he did as well. And so thankfully we have a great friendship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Question. That's going to be a decision on the Supreme Court about marriage.
You mean same-sex marriage?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've done many homegoings,
Yeah.
and being a minister, and also weddings.
Yes.
And I usually do it in two parts, the weddings. I says, okay, now this is God's part, the covenant
Yes.
between man and woman. And then I'd switch over and say, no, this is the government's part between the property
I like
rights.
that. Yes. Yes.
Because you have to know they're both different.
Right.
They're both different. One deals with the law and the rights of property, and the other deals with God.
Right.
And there are specific things in that. Now, some of you understand, being Christians listening, but a man and a woman, I've been married and divorced twice, and I'm going to get married again. And I told my present fiance, I says, her name's Rawabi. I says, I want a wife that loves God more than she loves me.
Yes.
And I will love God more than I love her. But I want her to love me, both of us, more than anything else, more than children, more than jobs, more than goals in life, more than material possessions. And that's godly.
Yes.
That's godly. And I didn't have that. My first marriage, I treated my wife and my family like my father did. I worked real hard. I was a real estate broker. If they wanted to see me, they had to come to the office, and I worked with my wife, Brenda Wallace. And then my second marriage, I found this lady, and she did Bible studies, and oh, this is great. I got all involved in the ministry, but forgot my family. And this third marriage is something very important to me. Very important, because it's not determined by me.
Right.
It's not determined by youth, because she's 29, going to be 30, and I'm 70, going to be 71.
Yeah.
But that's common to the Middle Eastern people. But the thing is, I want to marry her for specific reasons. She has a compassion for people. Okay, and that's what I have. And I see myself and her coming back to Flint, which is the city of my birth, to evangelize the world from Flint. I know it's not supposed to be a religious interview, but what do you see in going through? It seemed like you had a great divorce, or you get along well with your ex-spouse.
It wasn't great in the beginning, so you had transitions, but I would say, our families were a big part of it, because his family and my family were very close.
Mm-hmm.
They attended my stepdad's church, and then we all so even after the divorce, we all still spent holidays together, church together. So we were still very, very much intertwined. But I was just like any divorce. In the beginning, it was rocky, because you're working things out, and there's hurt feelings and anger, and so those were things that had to be dealt with and addressed. And so that process was addressed. And then by the time that my parents had passed away, and then kind of after that, we just went through this period where things just smoothed out, and we were able to effectively co-parent. And then, thankfully we got to the point where we just were friends. And then, like I said, his wife, I value her. Like, even now, when I'm on the campaign trail, they're at my house. Not today, but when I'm staying overnight. So like when I went to the UP and I was gone for 3 days, they stay overnight. They stay at the house. They stay there with the kids. They make sure everything is good. They watch my youngest, who's not even, with him, but they watch her too. And so we have a very, very, very good relationship like that. And I thank God for that. But I also aim to impart that wisdom to family law clients, because family law is a very contentious area of law.
Yes.
And I've seen so many people caught up in anger, bitterness, spirit of rejection, And so now I understand why God never let me get away from family law, even how so many times I tried, because it really is a ministry in an area that is much needed in this day and time.
You know, he did not like divorce. God hates
Yes.
divorce,
Yes.
but he allowed you to go through divorce so that you could learn
Yes.
about what that was all about.
Yes.
Because you can't give someone something you don't have.
You can't.
You don't
Yeah.
have. And you were in a traditional marriage.
Yes.
Today we have some other issues.
We do.
Same-sex marriage.
Yes.
We have an attorney general that is same-sex marriage.
Yes.
And she's what, the big boss for all the lawyers?
Yes. Supposedly.
Yeah. And in the court, the makeup of the court, you're taking a position of 4 years,
Yes.
which is the terms usually what?
8 years.
8 years. And you said something about corporate. What was that about the court? You're only 4 years. Why?
So this particular seat, there is an incumbent in this seat, and she was appointed by the governor last year.
Okay.
And so when she was appointed to fulfill the remainder of a term. So you had a justice who left early.
Okay.
And who left, before the expiration of her term. And so because of that, this is a partial seat.
A partial seat.
Yes,
So you were
4
there
years.
for 4 years.
Yes.
The justice that sat in the seat that you're looking to win
Yes.
from the people.
Yes.
How was that justice ruling on the court? Conservative, liberal?
Liberal.
Liberal. Okay, so you're going to bring conservative nature to that.
That's absolutely right.
And you're from a traditional marriage.
Yes.
And there's going to be cases brought before the state of Michigan Supreme Court about non-traditional marriages.
Yes.
You know, I see there being two genders, male and woman, man and
Right.
woman. And I guess now there's 7 genders they're talking about. What is your opinion about that?
So sex is determined by God.
Oh,
Gender
okay.
is to me is a social construct that they want to manipulate. But I believe that sex, and if you want to use them interchangeably, gender is determined by God.
Mhm.
And I believe that marriage is in between one man and one woman.
Says that in the Bible.
Says that in the Bible. And that's what I tell people when they're upset with the way that I feel. I said, take it up with God.
Take it up with God.
Yes, it's in the Bible. Like I'm on the right side. I'm in alignment with the Word of God. You take it up with Him if you don't like it. But marriage is between one man and one woman. And so we see this attack on traditional family values because if you look, family is the first institution created by God. There's Adam, then Eve, and then everything flowed from there.
Yes.
So it's no surprise. I mean, just like in the garden, when the serpent, beguiled Eve, it's like it's the same thing at play with the family unit to destroy this foundation of the family unit. But again, my beliefs are unwavering on that, and I know I'm on the right side, no matter what flack I get from my position.
In the term of your life, you've seen things change
Yes.
as far as family
Yes.
concerned. And through that understanding, you've seen things that we're seeing in the modern days. Okay.
Yes.
They've taken God out of the schools.
Yes.
They've taken God out of the government. And they've even taken God out of church.
Yes.
In some. You're going to bring God back to the state of Michigan Supreme Court in that seat that you, in a conservative nature,
Yes.
in a traditional nature. I found, being a minister, that the church does not know how to love the transgenders, homosexual, same-sex marriage, that type of thing. We need to love them with truth.
Yes.
Truth. And just like you said, not participate in their make-believe
Right.
situation. So hold on just a minute. Hold on. We got a call. Good morning. This is Reverend Lawrence Adell Sifa, and you're on All Points TV, and we're interviewing a candidate for the state of Michigan Supreme Court, Alexandra Joy Taylor. And she's running on the Republican ticket, conservative.
Yeah.
We lost the call. Okay, anyways, but the thing is, we get calls wrong. With that in mind, how will you show love to the others and their beliefs
So,
and represent them
right.
according to the Constitution of the state of Michigan and the
But-
law?
So by following the rule of law, truth is love. And so that's the reality. Truth is love. And now we live in this time where people are offended by the truth and want to cancel you for the truth. And so there's this narrative that if you don't agree with my lifestyle, you're transphobic, you're homophobic. And I don't believe that. There are people in my life, people that I went to law school with that are transgender. My former paralegal, she's in a same-sex marriage. One of my deputy campaign managers from when I ran in 2020, it identifies as homosexual. I still love them with the love of God. I don't treat them any different. So the people that I have had in my life who adhere to a different lifestyle than I may agree with, I still just love them, So I don't think you don't have to treat people different. I don't change who I am. I'm still the same person, and they know that, and they've known that the entire time we work together. But I don't change who I am, and so I'm still gonna speak the word of God, and I'm still going to speak truth. But I'm gonna love you, so I'm not gonna be mean to you. I'm not gonna ostracize you. I mean, they been in my home. We've celebrated, we've gone on trips, we've done different things. So I'm just going to love you and show you what the love of God really looks like. I'm not saying you're going to hell, you're living. So I don't do any of that, because I believe that the best testimony and the best way to witness to people sometimes is through your lifestyle, the life that you live. So my life and the life that I live is consistent and living consecrated. And so again, I don't change myself based on their lifestyle and how they choose to live.
Okay. Well, what are some of the key message of your campaign?
The key message, so my slogan, so to speak, is liberty and justice for all, just like in the Pledge of Allegiance, because we have lost the sense of liberty, especially with the Constitution, and getting people to realize that it's not this fight of red versus blue. Like, this is a good versus freedoms, which I believe are God-given freedoms. I believe the Constitution was inspired by the Word of God, and so our liberty is at stake. And when we see the weaponization of courts, that's a lack of justice. So you might like it in this instance, for example, they just don't like President Trump. So you're okay with what's happening. But, I'm trying to get people to understand that this is destroying the very foundation of justice when you can weaponize courts and systems against political opponents and people that you don't agree with. And so that's, the tagline is simple, just liberty and justice for all, irrespective of your political beliefs, your orientation, how you choose to live your life, is liberty and justice for all.
Okay. What are some of the struggles with you in your present life?
Struggle?
You're going to have those, and you're going to bring those thoughts to the court, the most important court in the state of Michigan.
Right.
And what are some of the struggles that you've had in your present life? I know you mentioned divorce.
Yes.
What else?
I mean, that would probably, be the main thing, is divorce. But I don't know if I would necessarily consider that a struggle, so to speak. It's just, it's something that I've gone through that gives me a perspective and an understanding for those litigants who may come before the court on family law cases. And I think it's an asset to the court, because we have so many justices who don't have a background in family law. And you have a lot of family law cases that go before the Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court. And so I think that these challenges that I've been through in my life now serve as a testimony, but have broadened my perspective when those cases will come before me, just having a deeper understanding and compassion about those situations.
Okay, all right. You understand that our government in the state of Michigan and in the United States of America are corporations.
Yes.
And they were done for a specific purpose, for those that want to control our governments. You mentioned we the people
Yes.
in the documents and pledging the allegiance to the
Yes.
flag. For the republic which it stands, there's no republic. It's a
Yes.
corporation. And that's probably why they've taken it out of the schools. That being the case, you know that a corporation is beholden to only the decisions of the shareholders.
Right. Yes.
A republic is beholden to
To the
we
people.
the people. How do you feel about that?
So this was something that last year when I started out in the Senate race, I talked about in great detail. So we have a globalist Marxist agenda at play, not just in our state, but in our country.
In the world.
In the world. I did a lot of studying of Agenda 2030, which is only six years away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we see. So when you think about these corporations.
Excuse me, that's from the what? United Nations.
Right, the UN, the WHO, WEF, the demonic trifecta. And so you have these corporations, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, that own, a great deal of the S&P. And so, but a lot of that is because our legislators are bought and sold, even the Republican ones. You have a lot of rhinos, but they're bought and sold. And
rhinos means
Republican in name
only. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So you have a lot of them that are bought and sold and have never represented the people. They're representing their own interests, and so they're fulfilling the agenda of these corporations, which is how you have people who go into the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate, and their net worth might be a couple $100,000, and now you have people in the millions, and it's like, well, you don't even make that in a year, so how does that happen? Well, it's from these corporations. They're serving corporations, not serving the people. And that's why I tell people elections matter. Elections matter. We have to elect different people because the people that are supposedly representing us are representing the interests of corporations.
Yesterday was Juneteenth.
Yes.
And I tend to look at it as not just a racial issue, but the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
On that date was to liberate all peoples.
Yes.
In our country, all peoples. And it's important to liberate all peoples. When you make a decision as your vote, 1 of 7 on the Supreme Court, and something comes in regarding a person's rights, how are you going to vote on that?
According to the rule of law.
Rule of law.
The Constitution.
The Constitution.
Yes.
Not the corporation.
Not the corporations.
Okay.
No.
Let me ask you another question.
Yes.
That's a very important position.
It is.
And it could attract many millions of dollars. Do you have a price?
No.
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 Okay. So you care about the people.
I do.
I see that in the things that you've experienced,
Yes.
what you're teaching at your law school,
Yes.
Caring about the small, and
Yes.
the family law. If an issue came to you regarding the rule of law and someone came and said, I need your vote this way, what would you do?
Yeah, it's absolutely not. I'm not bought and sold.
Bought and sold.
I mean,
I want the people to know.
Right. It's hard for people like myself, running for these offices because they want people in these seats who are bought and sold. And so I've come up against some opposition because, again, they don't want sold out believers in Christ in these seats because they know there's no price. Because at the end of the day, I have to answer to God for everything, every decision, every vote. And so because of that, again, there are certain things that I just will not do. And again, you have the powers that be that know that. And so that has led to challenges, in the race and even just politically, which is why I tell people, especially when I speak in churches, we need lots of prayer and lots of support because as Christians, we are going into this dark environment, this political environment that is, overtaken with corruption and even from people who are professing Christians. And so you have to, we need prayer and to uplift us and to keep us covered in prayer because of that, because it is a dark environment.
Do you know the first meeting of the Continental Congress?
No.
What they did?
Mm.
They prayed.
Yes. Yes.
Before they started any communication, any discussions about, because they were all big landowners.
Yes.
And all of them believed in God.
Yes.
There were no atheists at that time.
That says a lot.
Yes. Should the people of the state of Michigan vote for you, and why?
Yes, they should. The people of the state of Michigan should vote for me as somebody who has integrity, experience. I have a breadth of experience practicing in courts around our state. I'm licensed in state and federal court.
Wow.
And the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the court that sits under the U.S. Supreme Court. But even more important than that, I am a righteous woman of God, and I am here to bring righteousness back to our judiciary, back to our state, and to protect the Constitution, to adhere to the rule of law, and to not further a political interest or agenda or a corporate interest or agenda.
Are you running for a seat on the state of Michigan Supreme Court for only 4 years?
Yes.
Would you want to continue on the state of Michigan Supreme Court?
If it be God's will. I've learned that, I have these plans in my head and I'm like, okay, Lord, this is what I'm going to do. And then he just mixes it all up and changes the course. And so if it be his will for me to continue, I'm definitely, I'm open to continue serving as long as he would have me do so.
Now, you said you also stand on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals.
I've practiced in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
I've done appeals
On
in that
that.
court.
And that's the next step goes where?
That's the court directly up under the U.S. Supreme Court. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you've served there. So you have an understanding of federal law
Yes.
and state law. And do you believe in federal or state rights?
So the state rights.
Federalism or state rights?
Right, the state rights. So nobody ever talks about, we were talking about this yesterday, the Michigan Constitution. Everybody talks about like the U.S. Constitution, but we have a constitution here in Michigan, and so I believe in state rights. However, the U.S. Supreme Court, is the law of the land, but I believe in state rights.
And when Roe versus Wade was sent back to the states,
yes,
I think that was important. I don't think the federal government should have made a decision over the whole country. I think what they should have done was make, sending back to the states, because the state government is separate and autonomous.
Right.
Michigan could actually declare war on Ohio.
Yeah.
They have, according to their constitutions. Will they? No.
Yes.
But we do understand that control of the federal government is from purse strings.
Yes.
Purse strings that come in.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand that it's not, I can see in your mind, it's not about money. It's about the rule of law.
Yes.
And that's some very admirable qualities.
Thank you.
Yeah. One thing before we leave, because we've got about 2 minutes, what do you believe about the sanctity of the vote being eroded from the last couple elections?
I believe that without election integrity, the right to vote is illusory. We don't really have a right to vote. And so it's deeply concerning. I myself have fought election integrity cases. And because of that, I've had left-leaning organizations grieve my law license twice. I've been sanctioned as an attorney for an election law case. And so I believe that we have a troubling trend going on, that because we are asking questions and seeking the truth, which the court, we were always taught in law school, is the truth. Trials are like a truth finding function. So because we ask questions and are seeking the truth, you are penalizing us. And again, that is deeply troubling. I do believe that there is reason to be concerned about the integrity of our elections. And I do question some of the results that we've seen in the last few years about these elections. But again, I always go back to this is why elections matter. So if we don't start winning some of these seats, I think we will see a further erosion of the right to vote and election integrity, along with the trampling of our Constitution and the furthering of this globalist agenda.
And in this election that will happen on November 5th, Tuesday, is a very important election
The most
in our
important.
country.
Right.
And not only that, because we are the policemen of the world.
Yes.
The world looks to the United States of America. We're the most powerful government on the face of the earth,
Yes.
all because we were founded by God's principles.
Yes.
And you believe that.
Yes.
What major issue that you could say that is on the agenda for the 2024 election? And what would you like to see?
Outside of like the court race.
Mhm.
So, we have a Senate race, and I think that that's going to be a major election because our border, this is a big problem.
Mhm.
That's a major issue
Mhm.
on the election, is the security of our border. And what we are seeing right now are thousands of people coming across, weekly, sometimes daily. And I was watching it the other day. It was young Chinese men that were
Yeah.
coming across. This is a major issue for us. We don't know who is in our country, who could be activated to come against us. And so I think this is a major issue,
problem.
a major problem that will be addressed. And that is going to be a consequence of this November election. And so if we don't shift, by electing a different president and taking the Senate seat here in Michigan, I don't know what will happen, because we cannot keep going at the same rate with just people are just coming across. I mean, there's no border agents, because we don't have enough down there, and it's problematic. Yes.
Well, Attorney Alexandra Joy Taylor, thank you for coming and being interviewed
Thank
here at
you.
All Points TV. You're a very nice lady.
Thank
You
you.
have the heart of God, and you, the people, will make a decision on November the 5th of one of 7 voices on the State of Michigan Supreme Court. Thank you for attending another program of All Points TV. I'm Reverend Lawrence Adell Sifa, and you all be blessed.